the attachment.
Oh,
This
good.
meeting is being recorded.
Sorry about that. I said it weeks ago, but it was I put Hmail instead of Gmail in the.
Oh, sure, no problem. That's how it looks like we're good. Perfect. Thank you. And with that, my name is Megan Ryan. I am the president of the Manila Community Service District Board of Directors, and I will be the chairperson for tonight's meeting. I would like to call to order tonight's meeting. It is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, and it is 6:34 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom and phone in. And the participation information is located on the agenda. So with that said, we'll jump in and we'll do roll call to determine a quorum. So for the board members, state your name and present.
Danielle Muniz, present.
Boya Falk, present.
John Broderick, present.
Okay, great. And Dave will not be joining us this evening as he has some other commitments. So it's 4 of us this evening. We do have a quorum. Thank you. Item number 2 is AB 361, Resolution 2022.03, proclaiming a local emergency persists in accordance with the Brown Act to continue holding these meetings virtually. The resolution approved by the board last month covers us for this month. So I would just state that for the record. Are there any agenda modifications? Seeing none, we will move forward with the agenda as noticed for this evening. That brings us to item number 4, which is a presentation item regarding the Caltrans Jacoby Creek Bridge replacement, closure of 101 impacting Highway 255 in Manila. And Chris, if you want to introduce Jeff, or Jeff can get going, either way, I'm happy.
Yeah, I'll introduce him really briefly, and also I'll get rid of the screen share. Jeff is representing Caltrans. A month or so ago, when there was a lot of detour signs on 255, it brought some concerns from the public up about what kind of traffic impacts it would have through our town. And Jeff decided to get a hold of us and do some preemptive PR work here, and I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So it should be relatively quick, but I did want to get out in front of a planned closure of 101, which will have some traffic detouring through 255, which I'm sure you guys are particularly interested in there in Manila. So I had previously come in to give you guys an update on the detour signs, I think, that were noticed out there some months ago. And at that time, I mentioned that early this summer, we were going to be doing the actual move of the Jacoby Creek Bridge. So for those of you maybe that weren't part of that update, if you're not aware, you know, anytime that you're traveling southbound on 101 there and going over Jacoby Creek, you realize that you kind of jog over and detour into the median over a structure that was built. That bridge structure is actually the final structure that we'll use in its old alignment where everyone used to drive prior to the project. And on Saturday, July 23rd, our contractor is actually planning to perform what's called the jack and slide method. So using various equipment and rollers, they're actually going to pick up that structure and slide it into place. And I have an image here, an aerial view, which I think kind of shows it well. I see screen sharing's disabled for me right now, so that's fine. But anyway, I want to just give everyone an update on the times our closures are planned for this weekend. So on Friday, this Friday, July 22nd, beginning at 11 p.m., we will start a 6-hour closure, full closure of 101. So southbound traffic will be stopped ahead of Jacoby Creek there. The highway will reopen at 5 a.m. So as I mentioned, it'll be a 6-hour closure. And that is simply to have the contractor test that they can actually facilitate movement of the structure. Assuming that all goes well and everything goes without a hitch and they can move it, we will do a full closure the next night, which will last 10 hours to do the actual movement. And that will be from 8 p.m. on Saturday, July 23rd, and the highway will be closed until 6 a.m. on Sunday, July 24th, a 10-hour closure, as I mentioned. And that will be to actually perform the movement. So if you decide to travel southbound on 101 from Manila there at 6 a.m., we should have the highway back opened up, and you will no longer be making that jog into the median. You'll simply just be going straight as you were prior to the project commencing construction. The other thing I wanted to note is in order for the contractor to do the approach work to the bridges, so as you'll notice now, we have a lot of paving that jogs everyone into the median. There is still some pavement work that needs to be done so that vehicles cannot make that jog and go straight. So we will have a single lane closure during the day on Saturday. So we will roll into that 6-hour full closure Friday night to early Saturday morning, which will roll into a single lane closure. So we'll have one lane open. You'll still be able to travel on southbound on 101. We will not be detouring traffic to Manila. Not that people, may or may not decide to do that, but it is an off-peak time, so we are not expecting high traffic volumes, which is why we decided to have this happen on a Saturday when we have lower volumes. We will also have the shoulder closed through a segment where they're going to be doing this approach work. And to facilitate bike movements, there will be a bike detour onto the Bay Trail. And the bike trail that City of Arcata built there is conveniently located right next to our project. So it's really not, I think, much of an inconvenience for cyclists to just jog off the highway onto the trail and then back onto the highway immediately south of the project. So anyway, it's been a couple of years since we've started this project, and we're excited to finally get this last step in place and replace this bridge that was much needed to be replaced. So anyhow, just wanted to get out to all of you. I know last time you guys saw the signs out there in 255 and were curious what that was all about. I think we could have done a better job probably letting you guys know ahead of time. So that's a lesson learned for me as a project manager to be sure that we identify all the relevant stakeholders that would be interested in such information. So I'm glad that community members had reached out to Mike Wilson and he doubled back with us to let us know. So you guys are definitely on my radar now, and I manage a lot of projects in the Eureka and Arcata area. So you guys are always at the top of my mind for anything that I feel you guys might be interested in or could have an impact on your community traffic-wise. So, and with that, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I can actually put, I'll put my contact information in the chat. So if there is any issues or concerns with the closure, I will pay attention to my messages over the weekend. And while I will not particularly be out there, I do have contact with our construction staff that will be managing the contractors. So if there is anything of concern, please don't hesitate to shoot me a text, give me a call, and just let me know, and I'll do what I can to resolve the issue as best we can, as quick as we can. And I guess with that, if there's any questions, I can answer those now.
Great, thank you very much. Does any members of the board have any questions?
I just want to say thanks, Jeff, for coming and preemptively reaching out to inform us on that.
Yeah, definitely, my pleasure. And I'll just interject here if there's no other questions, but I try to make rounds with city councils, board of supervisors, Rotary clubs and whatnot, just to give, overall project updates and things that are going on in our backyard. So if you guys would ever like to get updates on just general projects in the area, Eureka Arcata, feel free to reach out to me, and we can put me on an agenda, and I can have an item there to give you guys an update, as often as you guys would like. But there's definitely a lot of transportation funding being invested in our local community, which is exciting because most of the time transportation dollars go towards where the population and vehicles are. And I think we're kind of blessed in that we don't, when you want to go somewhere, it's pretty predictable when you're going to get there. We don't have to worry about congestion too much, but there's a lot being invested in our community. And if you guys are interested in hearing more about that and when those things are planning to be built and what stage they're on, I'm happy to come to your board meeting and provide those updates.
Great, thank you very much. And as those opportunities arise, we'll keep Chris informed, and he'll reach out to you. I appreciate your time coming to our meeting this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too. All right, great. Well, that was very informative. Looks like it'll be an exciting traffic weekend in Manila. Hopefully not so much with it being overnight. Moving on in the agenda, we're going to go to public input, petitions, and announcements. The public is invited to make petitions, announcements, or provide information to the board for matters that are not on the agenda. Public, we have 3 minutes and to discuss or bring matters forward regarding items not on the agenda. Because it's not on the agenda, we cannot take action or have discussion, but can, could possibly be scheduled for a future hearing date. So with that, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will close public comment for the public input and move forward to the consent calendar. The consent calendar is typically contains items that are routine in nature. We can vote on them in one motion. Prior to making a motion, I'll poll the board members in the audience to see if anyone wants to speak specifically on the items on the consent. If something does get pulled, we'll open that for a public hearing separate. The first item on the consent calendar is approved draft minutes of the regular meeting of May 17th, 2022. Are there any board members or members of the public who would like to discuss this item separate? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll move on to receive disbursements May to June 2022. Are there any members of the board or public members that would like to have this item heard separate? Thank you. Seeing none, I would leave items A and B on the consent calendar and ask for a motion to approve.
This is Danielle. I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have Danielle and Sequoia for first and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to item number 7, and this item is to receive the Manila Park preliminary design and master plan alternatives.
Hello, everybody. Give me 1 second to get this to fit the screen here. I get some other stuff out of the way. I presume you all have gotten a copy so far of these plans. They're also on the website if you wanted to get some full resolution versions of this. But generally speaking, when we signed a scope of work with GHD for the per capita grant, they subbed out for a landscape architect Wildling Studio. And we met with them once at the site and kind of reviewed some of, walked through the park. And we also had provided her the RCAA survey effort that was done in 2019 and 2020. And you'll see a Wordle statistical looking addition to that in the plans. But generally, I wasn't necessarily looking for any action tonight because we only have 180,000 total for the per capita grant to start with the trail. And this design, both of these design options are basically master planning documents that when Caltrans Clean California grant through the Harbor District gets funded, we can provide them some more direction of how we would consider having them help us out. And that's a lot of that was the parking lot and integration to the trail. So with that said, if anybody had a lot of comments on it, the design is kind of wrapped up, but we can open up the scope of work again and have some revisions made if there was a lot of substantive comments from the board or the public that wanted to make any major changes to it. But basically, I was, as a staff member, I was very impressed with the work that she put into this. And there is a lot of potential here for the future for the park. And if we had 10 times the amount of funding in our pocket today, I would just simply ask that we implement one or two or a mix of both of these alternatives. And with that said, if anybody has any questions, I can try to answer them to the best of my ability. And I know Brett's here tonight too, and he can probably also chime in on some of the technical aspects of what would it take to get some of these projects done.
Thank you, Chris. So to clarify, what we have in front of us are two alternatives that were already predetermined. And the purpose of this for this evening is to receive it. And beyond that, and then I guess what feedback specifically would you be looking for from us? Or is this something we'd want to be more familiar with and then bring it back in the future, or?
Yeah, it's kind of a lot of work that we have basically a master plan with two alternatives in front of us, and we have enough money funded to do basically just the trail, as we talked about a few months ago when we didn't get the SPB grant. We did get the per capita fund. So when we went to when we met with the architect, we basically said we just want a trail, but she did go far and beyond and gave us a master plan with an alternative. So it really puts something in our pocket for down the road. I would think that both of these could come back to the board as more funding is available, and we could start picking and choosing and mixing and matching these amenities for bigger projects. I haven't actually overlaid both of these trails, just the trail version of it, as far as us moving forward with getting permits and getting that part of the per capita implemented. So I'm not sure what big differences would arise there, because we're not 100% sure what kind of CEQA permitting we're going to need or any problems with that. So I think if after tonight, once we get together with GHD to start implementing the trail that we agreed to start working on, we might have to come back to the board in the next month or two to make any clarifications or decisions at that level. But tonight, we're just here to really receive these and glean any comments from the board of anything large that stands out or something missing that we should definitely consider for the future. And generally speaking, you can see the two different themes that she chose, and one of them has a small tiny village up where the RV park used to be, and the other one has somewhat of a skate park that kind of goes around it. Some of the amenities have been realigned due to some notions that like tennis court should be pointing north and south, and the field being aligned to how the sun sets and things like that. So if one of the pages, by the way, says if we could do it all, what it would look like. There's a lot of disc golf rearranging in this too. And these both are really, if we had a couple $1 million, we would just pick one of these or a mix of them and go for it. But what staff's angle is tonight is to have the board receive these, collect any comments from them, forward them to the architect for any revisions if we decide to do that, and then start implementing the trail.
Great, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Were there any board members that had questions for Chris?
I'll just say I like the idea of a skate park.
If I could expand a little on the skate park idea, We've had a couple of residents come in that were very strident about wanting to start funding a skate park, even creating a little NGO group that would start collecting money for volunteers to get a significant amount of money to do it, and they have backers. And I told them that it sounds great, but let's hold off and see what my board says about these designs and how the public feels about starting the per capita as it is. So having some area set aside for that amenity, I think, is a good idea. If that grows legs, I think we'd come back to the board for an official approval to move forward with dedicating the land to that effort. But there's definitely some interest in having a longboard skate park go around someplace at the park.
Yeah, I would concur with that, and definitely see a lot of skaters and rollerbladers using the tennis court currently.
Yes.
I think that it seems like if we have the funding to pursue the one plan of updating the trail, that we'd want to compare, like you said, overlay the trails and kind of take a look at that planning part. And the scope of either one of these is huge. I mean, this seems like, I don't know, like 5 to 10 year projects. Like maybe Brett would have an idea of, if the money was there, what the time frame would look like for this. And I think that it is really important to involve the community. I know that a lot of these ideas have come from prior surveys and things like that. But I know in 2015, when we did like a visioning, that the strongest recommendation that came out of that was to develop a parks commission, so that there would be members of the public who may have, an interest in the park or an interest in the process of making decisions to be involved. And I would just like to see that incorporated somehow moving forward in this development, because like you said, those guys who are interested in the skateboard, in the skate park might have, funding or ideas or, or maybe a commitment to see that through, and they could participate in something like that. I think the PCC, the Peninsula Community Collaborative, ultimately took the place of that recommendation. That was an outside grant, and I really liked it. It was like, a cultural identity of the peninsula for like other community, Fairhaven and Samoa. But I'm kind of interested how we can incorporate the idea of a parks commission with this plan for decision making or input.
Yeah, I recall that effort, and when we brought it to the board at the time, they perhaps had some rear view mirrors on, and when they saw the word park commission, they didn't vote for it, so we didn't implement it. But I think that it might be a good idea, especially with the momentum of the Harbor Commission just getting ready, and the RCAA managing that grant for them, who were the PCC. It might be a good idea for us to consider creating a standing body that's a Brown Act body that is basically a park commission that it would be the board's choice, either a small one that encompasses just Manila, or perhaps is expanded to include Samoa, and the Harbor District can be part of that. So that might be a great discussion to have, and invite somebody from those agencies to our next meeting and consider that. So I think that's a great idea from staff.
I'd just like to say that I really enjoy both the plans. I think they're both very good. I kind of like the ramble for the longer trail. And with the community pushback on the RV park, I would imagine that the tiny homes would engender similar feelings. But right now, I think they're both excellent possibilities.
Yeah, we've had a couple of public comments already. How did we have a village show up in one of the plans? And the way that kind of even started was at a site visit at the park. There was just not 100% certainty of what was there. as opposed to what could be there in the future. And there was some talk about perhaps there would be legislation down the road or some kind of mandates that small agencies have to also maintain some kind of housing element in our plan. That might be way down the road, but we don't necessarily have that today. So I thought it was nice that it was put in there, but I share your sentiment there that we've already kind of had some experience with how the community feels about that. But if the board did choose the access design, like in its entirety, out of the blue one day, and I think that we might probably hear back from the public about that particular amenity, but I don't think there's anything stopping this district from doing piecemeal of any of these amenities.
Are there any additional questions for Chris on this item from the board? Seeing none, I'm going to open up the public comment. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak on the board receiving this park alternative plans, now would be the time to speak on this item. Please raise your hand. Seeing none, or Brett, did you want to go? I saw your hand there.
Oh, yeah. Just a minor point of some
Sure.
clarification. So I think some of the drivers of putting this plan down and on paper and a visualization is one, to evaluate, kind of what level of CEQA review and CEQA document might be required as it moves forward. And then certainly so for the per capita grant, we're kind of looking for low-hanging fruit, so to speak, some things that are implementable fairly easy and in the short term that would be compatible with a longer term vision for the park. So we want to make sure that we're not implementing anything that would then, what's got great community support, the kind of pathways seem to be there. And that's kind of our focus, or maybe, little updates to the picnic areas or, kind of along the shoreline there. Those seem to be, everybody was in agreement on those. And then there will certainly be some more public outreach, especially with, the disc golf community, as far as how to best rearrange that. And so, yeah, I like the idea of a commission or something to kind of provide that input and guide that in the future. And then the other part being just that, kind of the grant that the Harbor District got that RCAA is going to be leading. We wanted to kind of get a general sense of space again, so that that's kind of compatible with a larger vision. They are kind of focusing on the parking lot area and a few other kind of minor amenities around. So yeah, just kind of need a layout to be able to start that discussion of environmental review and and make sure things are compatible. So just a little clarification.
Great, thank you very much on that. Appreciate your comments. And
Brett, sorry, can I just ask real quick, the environmental review, what's the timeline on that? Are you looking for a specific date to start that?
Yeah, so using these, the next part of our scope was to look at, what might be required for some of these components. So start that quickly, largely kind of looking at, again, that low hanging fruit that isn't, significant changes to use that would, require maybe more of a mitigated negative declaration for the full thing. And then we just kind of need to be careful about, lumping and splitting under CEQA. So this is the start of that discussion, and then start to kind of figure out what are the acceptable pathways to start implementing projects. So I know that's kind of vague, but that's kind of where we are right now.
Sure. So we would anticipate if there's any additional information, or because has a document been circulated yet? Doesn't sound like it to me.
No. This is kind of just very much concept. Yep. This is very much concept, and then we'll kind of move that forward, come back to the board with, okay, this is what we're thinking that we can implement under the per capita grant, and this is what we're thinking we can implement under the Harbor District grant, and how they kind of fit together, and and make sure that they're not in conflict with with the larger vision of components that will need, more extensive public outreach and coordination in the community.
Okay, great. Appreciate the clarification on that. And with not seeing other public members wanting to speak on this item, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board. Are there any additional comments or questions regarding this item by board members? To summarize, what I'm hearing is that we're receiving the report tonight, and I think as we move forward digesting this agenda item and getting more familiar with it in the coming months or two would be beneficial, and that as things unfold regarding environmental review and specific projects, those items will come back before us for at a minimum of discussion and action as needed. And perhaps in say the next month or two, a discussion could come forward regarding the Parks Committee and where that may play into this process. And I kind of think like at what would be the best time, when would be the best time to enact something like that based on funding and need, I guess, would be a part of that discussion, I would assume.
Yeah, my particular angle here would be to reach out to the Harbor District and RCAA really soon, once they choose and sign a contract with RCAA, to see if it would behoove us to establish a standing committee, perhaps together, or just an ad hoc committee just at the board level that would be temporary just for this particular level of particular grant.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Thank you very much. And with that, and seeing no other questions, confirming there's no other questions, let me know. But with that, it sounds like we can move on the agenda for this evening. And we are going to move on to item number 8. It is report items. This is a discussion and update section. Are there any, do board members have any updates regarding committees that they may participate in?
The June meeting for REDAC was the presentation of the audit, as well as a presentation from the Cirque Housing Collaborative. And that is the Community for Economic Resilience Consortium. And it's very interesting. They meet weekly in different avenues of need for the county, and that developed out of the pandemic. And I think that was it. It was a pretty light meeting, but I would encourage, I could connect you with anyone if you wanted to get some information on the Cirque meetings or anything like that, because that is a little bit outside of REDAC, although part of the plan is to continue funding that program through REDAC. So.
Great, thank you very much for the update. And with that, I think we will go to our next item B, just to update a staff report from Chris on how things are going.
Things have been pretty quiet. One thing I did want to talk about briefly was our auditor did come in today. He was kind of made a surprise visit. He wanted to make a visit last week and he decided to wait till Tuesday. And we had scheduled a meeting with him and our finance director, Danielle Muniz, and he was going to charge a small fee to do that. And today he changed his mind. So I'm going to try to arrange something to make sure that Danielle can have access to him so it doesn't go unnoticed. With that being said, he's going to be wrapping up 2021. And then he'll be moving right on to 2022. And then at that time, we'll either go out for RFP for a new auditor, or we will consider at the board level a contract extension for him, because we have to rotate every 6 years or every, yeah, he has 6 years total he can do it. So he's into year 3 on the next one. Otherwise, our water tank is leaking, and it was leaking pretty good the other day. So we're really glad that we're looking at getting a new one soon. If it's stopped doing it now, and it's something up at the top of the staves on the west side of the tank. So if that continues to leak, we'd have to lower our water level and kind of keep it more like 18 or 17 feet instead of the current 19 feet. So that's about 10,000 gallons that we would lose in storage, but it doesn't really matter too much because we don't use it unless there was an emergency. I put some funny words here down on my report here, so I'm not sure what I was doing. The candidate registration period, very important to me because I have a wonderful board and I hope you all can make it down to the county and sign up to become elected officials again, because we get a lot of fun stuff going, especially with these grants coming our way. So I hope that you guys can get down and get that taken care of. Otherwise, unless there's any specific questions, that's about all that's been happening.
Great, thank you, Chris. Are there any board members who have any questions on the general manager's report for this month? Seeing none, would like to thank you for putting this together and the reminder about the upcoming elections. Greatly appreciated there. And I did, for whatever it's worth, the elections office also has a large volume of information available on their website for you to digest. So with that, moving on to item number 9. This is we're going to go into, the boards will be going into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B, Public Employee Performance Evaluation for the general manager. Prior to going into closed session, I will take any public comment at this time regarding this item. If anyone would like to provide public comment on this, please go forward. And Rich Topin, I see your hands raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you for having the review that you sent out for people to comment. I'd like to add 3 things in his evaluation. One is he's a local resident and I like him. I think he's doing a good job. If he were to be replaced, I think there's a benefit to having a local Manila resident here. He does a lot of engineering work or prep work for engineers that the board would be paying for if you didn't have a person of his background and knowledge. I think that's a hidden contribution, perhaps not, maybe not, to the district. And he also, I'm familiar with McKinleyville, and you don't often see the manager getting in a ditch doing work. And you see that all the time. There's many things that his name slips me, the other major employee. Give me his name. I forget. I hate to forget the.
Ken, are you talking about Ken?
Yes. Often there's things that Ken can't do alone, and you'd be paying somebody else to do it or to help him. So I think that's another benefit that you have to think about when you look at his performance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public comment on this item, and we'll need to adjourn into closed session. So, but wondering how to do that. Yes.
I'm going to just start kicking people out because I've lost my invite screen. So,
okay.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, just say give us a ballpark and we'll be back.
Yes, absolutely. Will do.
Yeah, that being said, I'll reconvene the meeting. I think we might want to shut it down and I'll restart it at that point if when we come back out.
Yep, that sounds good.